staying with us. You're watching TVC Breakfast. Well, the Federal Executive Council is poised to revolutionize Nigeria's fuel landscape. This with a new pricing arrangement for petrol produced by the Dangote Refinery. And the refinery, which has begun producing 650,000 barrels per day, is expected to flood the market with its refined petrol, as announced earlier in the week. But the big question on everyone's mind is what will be the retail price. Dangote, that's Aliko Dangote, has revealed that the retail price will be determined by an arrangement approved by the Federal Executive Council led by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And this has sparked both optimism. Of course, skeptics have also arisen amongst Nigerians who have been grappling with high fuel costs for years. So once again, we ask, will this new arrangement bring relief or create new challenges? And that's what we want to discuss now. We bring in public affairs analyst Biodun Showunmi. He's here with us in the studio. Segun Showunmi is also with us. He's joining us virtually from our Abuja studios. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Welcome to TVC Breakfast. And let's begin in the studio with Mr. Biodun Showunmi. With this big announcement on Monday, Tuesday or thereabout, Aliko Dangote, officially announced the production of oil. It came just days before, the announcement of, the fuel prices. Many people are still reeling from that announcement. What do you make of, the Dangote option?
Yeah, well, what's clear is that the Nigerian oil industry has been in a mess for a long time. Successive administrations have made efforts to tamper with it one way or the other to get it to work, but it has never worked. We've been doing turnaround maintenance. I can't tell you for how long that we've been doing turnaround maintenance. We've never been able to get it right, to the extent that even when the PIA emphasized that NNPC should be commercialized, which steps which had been taken to commercialize it, they've still not been able to solve the problem. So we end up with a situation where the cost of fuel in Nigeria is so high, the volume alleged that we are consuming, could not reasonably be justified, and there were allegations of petrol smuggling to neighboring countries and all that, and some people were making profits from that. So something drastically has to be done to change the whole landscape. So here comes Dangote Refinery, which has the capacity to produce 650,000. Apart from Dangote, we have some 8 other refineries. Apart from NNPC, we have 5 modular refineries within the country which are also ready for operation. So you're talking about an installed capacity, of about 1.2 million barrels a day. That's the total installed capacity we have in the country. Do we have the feedstock for those capacity? We don't. Even to give Dangote alone, we don't. Because over the years, what we've seen with the last administration is that they've actually, forward sold oil under forward contract. So not until sometimes June next year, we won't get out of that to free more feedstocks, more crude oil, for those refineries. But one way or the other, what do we need to do to ramp up production? So that is what MPC is doing currently. We've seen production going up, and therefore they're able to spare some for Dangote. Now comes the price. Dangote is located in an export processing zone within the country. Basically, it means the federal government will not get any tax revenue for 10 years. Workers will not be able to go to strike, for 10 years. And then you have a stable, there should be a stable price regime, coming from that refinery, given those advantages of being in the export processing zone. They are also able to export excess of the products. Within the country, what has now happened is that we do not need to import 40%, of the 100% of the 40% which we used from our foreign currency will now be saved. Basically, 40% will be taken off the forest desk which is being currently used to import PMS. And I think that is what the government has done currently, to say, look, we do not need to do this. We need to create market, even for Dangote and other refineries within the country. We need to do backward integration so that we don't just end up exporting crude oil. Now, when it comes to the price of it, how do you determine the price? Already, the shipping rate is out of it. No duty is being paid. The federal government is going to sell the crude oil to Dangote in Naira. So therefore, they have a say in the pricing arrangement between the regulatory body and Dangote. They need to agree on what it is. If we are going to move away from the standard practice, that is, in order to guarantee the price of PMS in Nigeria, we need to move away from the standard practice. The standard practice is the price of PMS usually will be determined, by the international price of crude oil. And if you are moving away from that, in order to ensure that there is a stable price regime within the country for PMS, then the federal government needs to step in and reach an agreement on price, with Dangote. I think that's the stage which they are currently.
All right, let's quickly get Mr. Segun Shomi's thoughts on this. Just before we talk to you about, the prospect of the Dangote Refinery and its potential in stabilizing the market, let's begin with what you make of this back and forth from the presidency to the NLC, and also, the other way around. The presidency says President Tinubu did not actually promise not to raise petrol price, but we had the NLC president insisting that the president actually promised not to increase the price of fuel. What's your stance on this?
Thank you very much. Good morning. And my brother in the studio, on my show, how are you doing? Now,
hey, good morning, Shagun.
The president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria happens to have also given himself the responsibility of being the Minister of Petroleum. Therefore, we will, when discussing that responsibility of Minister of Petroleum, we will relieve him of his presidential immunities and speak to him as a minister. Mr. President, Minister of Petroleum, you have committed an impeachable offense and you should be impeached. You cannot say we don't pay subsidy anymore, and the NNPC, which comes under your supervisory purview as Minister of Petroleum, will now come to public space and tell us that a whooping $6 billion is being owed because they have been, they don't want to call it subsidy, selling or providing petrol by some magic. Under our laws, government money cannot be spent unless they are properly appropriated. Where did you get the appropriation authority to expend money that way? First problem. Second problem, you have a duty to supervise NNPC to the extent that all the monies they make, they do not just go on the frolic of their own to spend it without some clear understanding of what, when, how, and by whose authority. Second impeachable offense. I think the National Assembly to figure out a way to deal with that. In terms of what the Labour has said.
Mr. Shoumi, I'm totally sorry. I apologize now for the interruption. I just wanted you to apply some caution in your thoughts regarding what you deem as impeachable offenses. Yes, against the president.
But now come now. If you spend appropriation, if you spend money that is not properly appropriated according to the Appropriation Act, that's truly an impeachable offense. But we'll come back to that. I told you I'm relieving him of his duty as president so that we can talk to him as Minister of Petroleum. So that's that. Now, on the whether the president promised that he's going to increase the price or not with Labour, I think it does not matter what the president has promised. The president ought to know that this Nigerian establishment, this estate, made up of the citizens of this country, the visitors that come in, and all of the people that are here, we cannot afford an arbitrary increase in the price of petrol. There is no reason for that. Now, if you say because it's dollar-denominated and all that, it brings you back to the next question. Who authorized them to, reduce the value of our own money to such a point that we're now exchanging it at a miserable 1,600 for $1? When you devalue your national currency, that's a deliberate monetary and fiscal action that you took. And the consequence of same, you have to carry it among your mismanaged policies. Now, what is Labour suggesting? Labour is saying what the Nigerian people would naturally expect that they should say. You have taken about 15 months from the day you remove subsidy to finally agree that some kind of 70,000 naira minimum wage should be paid. You have not given them the grace of applying the 70,000 minimum wage to see how it will impact on their livelihood and how private sector will follow suit. Now they have been, the country itself, especially those who don't even get a salary, are now slammed with this new money. All of this does not augur well against a backdrop of us just exiting a 10-day shutdown by Nigerians who are quite complaining about the cost of their living and the standard of their living and what have you. For a nation that has a young population, that has a large number of the population being unemployed with inflation as high as the numbers are even now, you want to ask, is there no desire for those who are managing this country to ensure that the Nigerians can survive this season? If you are transforming the country and you are trying to create some, future, are you going to destroy today for the purpose of that future? Now, on the Dangote Refinery part, I would say the mere fact that Aliko Dangote and his team have been able to build this refinery, if for nothing, is something we should celebrate, because the world was beginning to think that the black man, Nigeria being the most populous, and therefore we're the ones that lead as black people, the world was beginning to think that we're incapable of anything. And now that he has done this, so we can say, okay, at least we know we can do it. It then brings you to the second question. I do not agree with the argument or the suggestion that government cannot run things that private sector can run. I think that what is missing between what private sector does and what government does is, one, private sector will ensure that consequences exist with their own workforce, whereas government will insist that its arrangements are laissez-faire, everybody can do whatever they like, nobody is going to be blamed, nobody is going to ensure that key performance indicators are measured, and therefore I think that it is a shame that we have ourselves in this difficult situation. Now, to the issue of where we are now as a nation relative to the centrality of petrol and its on our lives, the cost of diesel, cost of petrol, cost of transportation and all that, we cannot continue this way. Thank you very much.
All right. Mr. Shomi, let's put you on hold and come back to the studio for some response from Mr. Biodun Shomi here. Having listened to your co-analysts, what thoughts are running through your mind, especially as to the justification that we are seeing now, coming from the NNPCL announcement of, increment in fuel prices? How do you think, this is justified, vis-a-vis the anger, the outcry that has since greeted the announcement?
Yeah, there's no doubt that when there's no gain without pain, there is no way you can carry out a surgical operation without some form of pains being inflicted. The issue is, how do you do that? Do you now apply a epidural or something to reduce the pain or to deaden it? That's the issue which many people are talking about, and that's what they call palliatives. I am not one of those who believe in palliatives to start with, because it's not a fundamental, it's not fundamental to addressing the real economic challenges, which is our inflation is food driven. So therefore, we need to produce more food. That is what the solution is. What the government, in my view, what I think they're trying to do currently is to restructure the economic landscape in a way that arbitraging will no longer be possible, which is what Shegun referred to in relation to the issue of floating the naira, because we knew what used to happen, which is somebody will walk into CBN, collect naira at 450 naira, go and sell it at 750 naira. They will collect billions in dollars, from the CBN. These are really available information, you know, to the public. So government on their home part have a responsibility to respond to that, which is you have to flood the Naira to make it impossible for arbitraging to occur. The issue of the NNPC, you know, budgeting and all that, we need to understand the full import, you know, of the PIA. The PIA is not the federal government of his own accord that decided to commercialize NNPC. The PIA, the Petroleum Industry Act, actually, you know, changed the entire landscape in a way that NNPC has to be commercialized. Even currently, they're trying to follow the model of Aramco, whereas Saudi Arabia has fully sold off all the shares in Aramco. We are yet to do that. I know we have not fully, you know, completed that. That process has not been fully completed. But NNPC on its own is a trading company. That is why it is called NNPC Limited. I don't think the issue of under recovery of the cost of PMS by NNPC Limited, it's the problem of the president. I think it's the problem of the company with its chief executive. They have a chief executive. NNPC has a chairman. They have a group managing director. That is entirely their own problem.
But the president can call them to order.
Absolutely, because the company is owned by Nigeria. NNPC, as constituted today, because it has not been fully privatized as envisaged by the PIA, it is still owned by Nigeria. The fact is NNPC declared 3 trillion naira profit and then declared that they have 6 billion debt to bank. So the issue is not the naira. The issue is they do not have access to the foreign currency to pay that debt, which is what is affecting independent importers of petroleum products currently. They do not have the foreign currency. It's simply because we have already forward sold the oil. So the foreign currency coming in, a lot of it is actually going to service those debts. That's apart from, do not forget that all the oil majors, we have a joint venture partnership and production sharing contract. So it's our own portion of it that the past administration has actually traded off. So what you have is a situation where government has a lean way to maneuver. And out of what is left, 40% of it goes on PMS. That is why the refineries, Dangote and other refineries in Nigeria are very important, because it will take 40% of what we use our foreign exchange of the forex table. The moment we are able to do that, forex will now be more readily available, not only for manufacturers, but for also other businesses. It will be available for NNPC to also be able to pay off his debt. So I don't really think that's an impeachable offense. If you look at NNPCL Limited as a registered limited company, I don't think it's an impeachable offense. If anybody needs to address that, I think it's the group managing director of NNPC, in my view.
All right. So just quickly go back to Abuja. Mr. Shomi, some persons have also, you know, there are sides to this conversation. Another side is the fact that the Federal Executive Council has to determine the pricing of the fuel that Dangote actually, you know, releases. And the NNPC is the sole buyer of this petrol. Let's not forget that there has not been full, you know, deregulation of the downstream sector. And so this will still have a ripple effect in that sense. But with the recent calls for, you know, a systemic purging of the NNPCL itself as a body, don't you think some of the issues that, you know, we are facing right now, we will not still have them in the nearest future, as long as we still have the NNPCL being the sole buyer of this petrol from Dangote?
You know, with economics, there are two sides that an economist looks at. An economist sometimes look at the supply side and sometimes they look at the demand side. Now, if you are a government, your eyes must be on both. It is not enough for you to say government has no business in business, you are no longer responsible for anything when you know you are, and you are no longer regulating them when you know you are, and that, oh, they can do whatever they want, including they can wake up tomorrow morning and tell us that they're going to sell PMS to Nigerians at 10,000 naira per liter because you don't have any responsibility to manage the welfare, the security, the stability, the entire issues in your own country. Well, try it and see. I think that we don't need to, we can be happy that at long last, we can remove all the foreign component cost that increases the cost of PMS. Aside buying it abroad, there's also the fact that you pay taxes there, there's transportation costs, there's all of that. So that by the time you are now producing from the Dangote Refinery, they will not in reality be able to tell us now that they want to be telling us that there's no room or no opportunity for them to sell it at a price that we can easily afford in our economy. If other nations that produce other things, like cars or some other things they produce, can bring it to us and tell us that this is the price they want to sell it to us and we are compelled to buy it, then we also have a right as Nigerians to say, now that we have both ends of it, we have the raw material end, which is crude oil that we drill in our land, and now luckily we have the refinery part, which is also on our land with our labor at our own cost, because I'm sure Aliko Dangote knows that the government of Federal Republic of Nigeria backed him up significantly, even with forex at reasonable rate for him to be able to put it together. The Nigerian nation will have to benefit from that. We will not run this country on the basis of only making the books of business people and capitalists and their government cronies to be fat while the citizens of the country are miserable, thin, and dislocated. And beyond what my brother is saying there, it is the duty of the government to think through its policy and figure out how it's going to affect its citizens. Government is not in place for the sole purpose of speaking to his friends abroad or to his bankers abroad. No. The responsibility of government, first and foremost, is to guarantee the safety, well-being, and security of its citizens. And in that regard, petrol or whatever is no longer just a commodity. It has become a significant national commodity that can impact and even disrupt the country because it covers through everything. Nations have been destabilized only because of the price of bread. And bread is just food. If they don't eat bread, they can eat something else. They can eat potato. How much more when you have a particular commodity that runs through everything? People who sit down and pretend as if they can justify what government is doing, can't even afford to fill their own tanks successfully now, or pay or put their generator or cover these bills. Those of us who speak on behalf of the people, we're not speaking on behalf of the people because we want to call the government out. No, we're speaking on behalf of the people because at the end of the day, it's not the responsibility of the citizens to understand the intricacies of all of the, nice language, PI bill, this, that. No. What the Nigerian citizens are interested in is life abundant under these people. And for a party and a government that has a 4-year tenure, we're gone past maybe 15 going 16 now, it's almost 2 years. And then you're saying people that you have a problem of anesthesia to manage the pain. No, you've put the people under pressure from day one, and you have not done anything to ameliorate the pressure. That which you even call your palliative is one of the most mismanaged, annoying concepts you've run, which has only been, is just fraud prone. You can't even target, you can't give the things to the people in retail. We've offered you a lot of suggestions on how to do that, and then you expect that at this particular material time now, you truly think that the Nigerian people can afford to pay as much as 1,000 naira for PMS, and at the end of the day, they still have to stay on the queue for days on end. What are you doing? And then if you double the responsibility of being the president and then also being the Minister of Petroleum, if there was no need for a Minister of Petroleum, according to what you are saying that, NNPC can do whatever they want, they can spend, it's made up in their books and all that, then why then do we have a Minister of Petroleum? Somebody has a supervisory responsibility. Somebody has oversight duties. Somebody has even the Commander-in-Chief's responsibility of empathy to his own citizen. And anyhow you prime it, this is not good at all. And the earlier they go back to their default mode, they look at the whole thing that they're doing in all directions. I'm not even going to waste energy talking about insecurity and all of the other issues in the country. If you are talking about agriculture, you have about 2 or 3 planting seasons in a year, in 12 months. There's a dry, there's a wet, there's a dry. So in more than 15 months, how many planting seasons should you have had if you actually know what you're doing? And there's all of the things people eat. Some of them you harvest them in 3 months. Some of them you can harvest them multiple times in the course of the year. So if you know you're going to have food inflation issues, how many acreages of land have you and your governors and local government opened up or stimulated? And don't let nobody come and start telling us that we've not done it before. There was a time when we were in government, when Obasanjo was here, and wanted to increase and scale up cassava. We even had the cassava glut. We produced so much until we didn't even know what to do with it. So there's nothing making it seem like this country has not been run before, and that the geniuses who are mismanaging our country are experts at what they don't know how to do.
Mr. Segun Showunmi, still with you. I also want you to assess the role of government, especially, you know, where crops of Nigerians are saying we are expected to, you know, like Mr. Biodun Showunmi here said, no pain without gain. But on the other hand, there are Nigerians who say they are yet to see that form of response, so to speak. You know, there are necessary adjustments on the part of government, you know, perhaps cutting the cost of governance.
Bless you for this question. Bless you, bless you.
I wonder how this resonates. I wonder how this resonates with you.
Now, you see, when a leader wants to transform an environment like ours, and the people have been carrying burdens of continuous pressure, devaluation continually, increase in their price, and all of that over many years, and you come and say, I'm bringing something new, I'm going to renew the hope, and it's going to be different. How do you explain you're buying a private jet at this time? How do you explain you're buying an Escalade SUV, which is one of the top range, expensive on the market, brand new bulletproof? How do you explain all of the monies that you spend when you can easily cut down and trim down your government? How do you explain that you have the largest, most inefficient ministerial combinations in the history of our country? The law says every state should produce one. You have about 40, if not more now, if I'm not mistaken. What's that for? How do you explain that you came and said you're going to have a performance evaluator in their midst? Adiza, the former MPA woman, who is supposed to be the one managing them and evaluating them. How do you explain that damn 15 months afterwards, you have not evaluated them, you have not told us, we have not seen anything to suggest that you even understand that those you've given the assignment are not even doing it? And then how do you tell the Nigerian people to tighten the belts? No, not on their waist, but on their necks. You tell them to choke themselves to death, while at the same time, you're like just living like all is well, nothing is wrong, you can do whatever you want. You have to understand that there's something called the emotion of governance that allows the people to connect with you. When people are patriotic, when people raise their hands up and say they are standing with this government, it is because the government and the people are standing together. The people cannot stand in penury, misery, abject poverty, excruciating pain, and then the government is, you know, doing like all is well, and then you expect the citizens to understand or to empathize. So if tomorrow comes now, and NAS, the student union body says they're going to fill the street, and before you know what is happening, going by the trajectory of Nigerian Labour Congress, it won't be long before we start having that. And Nigerian Bar Association has also saying that, no, you can't do this to us. If everybody, civil societies come together and say, enough, and if the political class now join them in saying, really and truly enough, what do you think is going to happen to us? Are you going to run Nigeria for yourself? You are serving us. You begged to be in charge of this country so you can serve the citizens. And we, the citizens, are telling you, the life of our relatives in the north is really tough. Those of our relatives in the southwest too is very tough. They're shouting, Ibin power, Ibin power. The ones in the east too is the same, both on insecurity and on standard of living and the quality of life, and even just simple things that they have taken for granted over the years. You cannot rush into reforming people so that you will kill them. When you carry a patient that is been malnourished, you introduce the supplement and the nutrition in a systematic manner so that the life of the patient is also, you know, preserved. You can't feed everything in at the same time, or you can't drain out all the blood at the same time just because you are trying to manage some kind of complex issue. And it is not even really that complex, except for the fact that you have assembled a team of people that don't even know what they're doing.
All right, let's come back to the studio. Mr. Biodun Showunmi is still here with us. And, you know, in addition, I know you have one or two things to say in response to what Segun Showunmi has said. But I want to take you back to your earlier point about, you know, the President, Bola Tinubu, who is also, you know, the substantive minister of the Petroleum Ministry, and, you know, the state of NNPC, even though it's now commercialized, is, you know, still very much relevant, if you ask me, in this conversation. Some have said, okay, for a while they denied the true situation of things before the confession that they owed such a huge debt, and which was the reason or is the reason why we are still having the recurring queues. So what should be done about NNPC? What can the president, being the person on whose bucket all rests on, what can he do, especially to get accountability, from the NNPC? We still have a lot of concerns coming from, how the NNPC has been running our Commonwealth.
Yes, I understand the point being made by Shegun. There are so many hows and ifs raised by him. But let me first deal with the issue. What I think we need to make very clear now. When you talk about energy, the energy sector in Nigeria, it's not only petroleum. You also have the gas. So when we say Minister for Petroleum, what about the gas? So what I think this administration did, this president did, is to appoint a Minister of State for Petroleum and a separate Minister of State for gas. So therefore, if someone says Minister of Petroleum when you have two different sectors, is an anomaly. How does it capture the gas? So therefore, Mr. President can clearly say, look, I'm only in charge of energy. There's a substantive minister, responsible for petrol, and there's one responsible for gas. The only difference is that they are ministers of state and reporting directly to Mr. President. So within that context, Shegun can easily say, well, the president, again, is still responsible. But when you talk about responsibility, it's not just about petrol, it's also about gas. So you may not necessarily have a minister for petroleum. So we should be having a minister for energy, in my view. Now, on the NNPC's accountability and some of the issues which Shegun raised, and which I will clearly identify with, he made a very important point that government needs to call down on costs. Yes, we all agree on that. I agree with them on that. We have to call down on cost. There are steps taken so far which are yet, to fully materialize. For instance, I was one of those who applauded Mr. President when he mentioned the Orosai's report, that they will look into cutting the cost of governance. That is a major one than the issue of playing or one thing or the other, where you have multiplicity of agencies identified, by Orosai, I think since 2014. And we have done nothing about it. And we allow this to continue, draining the resources of the country, which we need to, deploy to create industries, invest in agriculture, create jobs and employment. And then we allow this to continue. That, for me, is unacceptable. It's the major issue. And Mr. President came out to say that he wants to deal with it. And I think he said did set up a committee. So what I think government needs to do is to accelerate whatever they are doing on that with a view to cut the waste. The National Assembly is also there. We have heard of issues of we will reduce our salaries and all that. That's not the major issue. The salary is just about 600,000 naira. The major issue is the allowances. That is what needs to come down. And that's the responsibility of the National Assembly to look into that, and then try and streamline whatever package they have to the reality of what is going on in the country. So, yes, I agree, there are a lot of wastages, a lot of areas where we can make reductions in cost of governance, but the major one is actually the issue of Orosai's report, which I think whatever we're doing, we need to accelerate efforts on it with a view to bring down the cost of running Nigeria. I don't know whether I've addressed all your issues.
Of course you have.
Yes, because I was specifically asking about, the issue with NNPC. Over the past years, even the past administrations, there's been so many billions, trillions of naira that have been pumped into NNPC, into our refineries. You talked about, the modular refineries, which are yet to, still be running as they should, despite all the monies that have been pumped into them. Yet we see them, still pushing back the dates for them to begin full operation.
Yeah, the modular refineries are ready. 5 of them are ready, including the Dangote Refinery. You can check this out. They are actually, the problem we have is the exact problem they have with Dangote. You cannot import crude oil as feedstock for your refinery only to end up selling the PMS, in Naira. Where do you get the dollar to pay for the crude oil which you've imported? That is why some of them are prostrate currently. The same situation that Dangote found itself, because it was not factored in that they will require that level of crude oil. At that time, nobody knew that a government or the last administration would sold our oil, under forward contracts and tied us into that obligation. So therefore, depriving us of the feedstock to give to Dangote and to other modular refinery without ramping up oil production. So what I think is going on currently is NNPC is ramping up oil production. Where we need to do the major investment is actually in the offshore, because that is where the real oil is now. If we don't invest in the offshore to be able to extract oil, we will not be able to meet the target of 2.5 million. Currently, we are struggling with OPEC 1.5 million. We should not forget that some of the oil wells onshore, are drying up gradually. Right. So the major investment is government needs to go into partnership with all majors with a view to invest in the offshore.
Right. Let's get final words now from Mr. Segun Showunmi, especially with your expectations now that Dangote Refinery is up and running.
Well, I will just say that, again, it is funny that it took Dangote some time to get it on stream. And all of those times when he was trying to get it on stream, what was the federal government doing? Shouldn't they have also been busy thinking about how would Dangote, PMS, whatever, get to the market and at what price? Why should it be one day late? Why do they need another committee meeting to sit down with people that are just... It's just too hard. And I'll round up with this. In 1973, there was an experiment that some nations, serious experiment, some nations said they're going to float their currency. Britain, United States, and a few others. I can give you a list later. And some others said no, they're not going to. Germany, Indonesia, and a few others. And after 5 years, those who floated said market force will take care of it. You know what happened? Those who floated got into debt because they kept needing more money to just make sure they can provide the gluttonic desire of capitalism and market forces. And those who did not had they built a big enough reserve to be able to carry them through. We do not guess and we do not speak only because it's convenient. When we say it's time now to write into our law, no human being would dare devalue our currency without a referendum. Because if we had not been devaluing our currency, can you imagine if the exchange rate today was not as woeful as 1,600? Are we the only country in Africa? How did our country become worse than even the CFR?
Right.
Something is not right and they know it and they don't fix it.
All right, Mr. Segun Showunmi, we thank you very much for your contributions on the program. We also thank very much Mr. Biodun Showunmi. Thanks to you both for speaking with us.
Thank you for having me.